Welcome everyone, thanks for joining the webinar. I've got a PowerPoint on the screen, but it's mainly for my use. I will make sure that everything's on the screen is read out, and after the webinar we will release the audio file. Yeah, the PowerPoint is for my reference as much as yours, to be honest. Tonight we're going to run it's going to run in three parts. I'll run through the guidance in kind of shorthand and just bring out some of the key messages and the key points. We'll then directly answer some of the questions that have been sent in via the form that people filled in to register. So it's great to get some questions into there. And then the last bit, which I hope there'll be at least 15 to 20 minutes for people to either ask questions in the chat or we'll take questions direct from people speaking. So the plan is I'll go through the PowerPoint and then we'll take the questions rather than stopping after each section. So it's been a interesting time, I'm sure, for everyone in terms of the uncertainty around when Goalball was going to be returning. We've worked hard internally with staff, players, and a number of clubs to get to this point. And probably more importantly, the guidance that we've issued last week is cleared by the government and Public Health England. The guiding principles to the guidance. The first one is safety, and the well-being of members is the number one priority. So whenever we're thinking about returning to play, safety has to be top priority in the current climate. Information to allow people to make informed decisions about whether they intend to return to your session, to a Goalball UK event, whatever it is. We need to make sure people have got information available to them to make that choice. When people make the choice, it's about opting in. In the guidance in Appendix A, there's some wording that we've provided that we'd recommend clubs use to communicate the opt-in process. There was a lot of talk about disclaimers, and we have been advised not to go down the disclaimer route. Although disclaimers have strong words on the piece of paper, when they actually get to a court of law, they're not much use. So it's about people opting in. So it's an individual's choice, and that includes workforce as well as players. No one should be made to feel pressured to play Goalball or volunteer or coach. So it really is up to the individuals to opt in. Goalball UK are here to support, and hopefully this is a theme that will come out through the discussion tonight. We are going through this process firsthand as much as hopefully you are about to. And we're learning along the way, but we want to support. So please do get in touch as and when things come up, and we will do our best to support you in whatever it is. Role of clubs is ultimately to provide the safe environment for your members to play, volunteer, and coach. And one thing at Goalball UK we're not kind of shying away from. This is going to involve considerable work to plan and implement. I think it's very easy to try and simplify everything, but unfortunately this isn't a simple issue that we're dealing with. So there's going to have to be more work done, particularly in the planning phase of your returning to play. Volunteers and players, and I guess coaches, if they're paid, look to offer support to your club with the implementations. It really is going to have to be a joint effort. Be patient while plans are put in place. things aren't going to happen overnight. There's going to be at least a few weeks from the point of your club embarking on looking to return to play, to actually getting a booking in place. And I'll come on to venues slightly later. It's going to be different. Okay, there's going to be new protocols in terms of delivery and what it feels like to play goalball during COVID-19. So please try and adapt the best you can. And then lastly, be responsible to protect yourself and others. It will only take a few idiots to ruin it for everyone. So please, please, please take personal responsibility for your actions, and provide support to your clubs in trying to abide by the rules that are going to be put in place, rather than trying to make shortcuts to potential rules. So in terms of the way the government have laid out how team sports can return, there's 3 kind of main risk factors that they are really concerned about. And we're going to go through these one at a time. So population, they're defining this as the number of participants likely to take part in the proposed activity, plus known risks of those participants. In terms of how we're looking to mitigate that initially, within your sport, this is assuming you have a normal 4-court badminton sports hall, a maximum of 30 people in the hall, playing participants, a maximum of 12, and up to a maximum of 1 support personal participant. If you're a participant and you don't require support, we encourage you not to bring that potential person to the venue, if you can manage by yourself. If you can't, then there is the option of one support person per participant. Avoid unnecessary people entering the hall. So, for example, at pick-up times or people meeting people after the session, rather than your whole family and the kids and the gran and the auntie coming in to meet you, maybe ask them to wait outside, and then just one person come in if they're collecting people from a session. Particularly at the start and the end of sessions, avoid unnecessary people entering the hall. And we really do need robust register systems. I hope all clubs are taking registers already, but it's a good time to make sure that you've got everyone's contact details that are coming to the session, and then record who is at each specific session. That can be done on a Google Sheet, a Microsoft form, or old-fashioned pen and paper, however your club wants to do it. But it's important that you do have a register system in place. Also on population, really try and plan your sessions so people know well in advance when things are going to be, and that they can let you know they're coming, rather than people just turning up out of the blue, because depending on the size of your club, that may push you over the maximum of 12 playing participants. Droplet transmission, not something I knew about 6 weeks ago, but I now know quite a bit about it. So this is classed as the duration, the proximity of the participants or volunteers, coaches, officials, the amount of time they spend, and how close they are together. To mitigate this, social distancing when not on court, and again, including before and after the session. If you can, plan the space so that each person has their own personal space to keep belongings. With the session numbers and the sizes, this should be possible initially if you're in a 4-court badminton sports hall. Face coverings, bit of a contentious topic, and there's lots of different advice. At the moment, our guidance is if you can maintain social distancing, then you don't need to wear a face covering. But if you're a workforce or you're a player off court, and you can't maintain 2 meter social distancing, then you need to be wearing a face covering. In terms of the game itself, based on the risk template provided by the government on return to sport, team sport framework, goalball's actually low risk in terms of the players don't actually, for the majority of the game, don't actually face each other. And the time you spend in proximity to that person, if we talk about meet passes, meeting at posts, timeouts, movement shots, is obviously very limited. So it is deemed as low risk. But to mitigate this further, in training, we are recommending that you avoid meet passes so you don't come face to face. Grouping at timeouts, so the traditional all meet at back centre or one post, we're advising against that for the time being in training. And similarly at penalties, when people meet back centre to hide the ball, or when two players go off on the same side, again, we're recommending for the time being in training that doesn't take place. Foamite transmission. Ultimately, this is sharing of equipment and surfaces. So in our kind of risk assessment of goalball as a sport, this is our biggest risk factor. We have the ball, the goals, and unlike many other sports, we also have the floor. I think there's only combat sports that also share the floor, but not in the same way that we do with our hands. To kind of mitigate this, regular hand cleaning and sanitisation needs to happen, and needs to happen regularly. So in terms of when you're planning your sessions, think about people washing or sanitising the hands on their way in, definitely on the way out, and then have regular cleaning breaks for people's hands during the session. We are recommending all individual players and workforce have their own hand sanitizer, and then clubs purchase kind of, I guess, bigger bottles of hand sanitizer as backup at the sessions. So people have their own, and then club can provide additional if required, if people forget it, for example. Regular cleaning of the ball, goals and the floor, mainly the team area. This is recommended every 20 to 30 minutes. And again, this needs to be planned into your sessions. From my point of view, and from, I guess, Goalball UK's point of view, we see this as the biggest area of disruption into a normal club session. The time to clean the floor, the ball to the goal, and the workforce potentially provided to do that. As I said, we see that as the biggest challenge. There is a potential thought that clubs could, rather than maybe have a 2-hour session, they could have a longer 4 to 6 hour session, so that once you're set up and you get into a bit of a rhythm of actually doing this cleaning every half an hour, and over the period of time, people still feel they've had substantial goalball, rather than maybe 15 minutes to set up and clean. Then after half an hour, you've got to clean again. Next half an hour, you've got to clean, then break down. Before you know it, if you've got 12 people in your session, the amount of court time could be quite limited. So it's something to think about when you're planning. Don't share kit. People shouldn't be sharing kit anyway, but definitely in this climate, don't share kit, particularly shades, pads, boxes, chest plates, whatever normally gets shared around. I've seen at tournaments and some club sessions. Please don't share kit. If you get new participants that need to borrow kit, ensure the kit you've got is clean, and then depending on the value of the kit, I would just ask them to take it away and wash it at home, or depending again on a conversation with the participant, it may be on long-term loan, or they even buy it, or you give it to them, to avoid kit coming back and forth from someone's house after previously being worn by that person. So going back to, I guess, the role of players, this element in training is going to feel different. There's going to be a lot of stopping and starting. So really need to be patient and work with your club. The other thing that's been talked about is when you're planning your sessions, is what tasks could you give your players when there is a cleaning break for the volunteers and coaches to clean the court, the balls and the goals. What could your players be doing that is goalball related in terms of thinking about the game, creating the next drill, creating the next rule that we're going to introduce into that game, to give people tasks so that people aren't just potentially standing around waiting for people to finish cleaning. Steps to returning as a club. Please don't let it fall on just one person. So we're suggesting that you appoint a working group, and within that group you appoint a COVID-19 officer or officers. The direct output of this group is to complete a COVID-19 risk assessment. This should be separate to your normal venue risk assessment and session risk assessment. Step 2, contact your venue. They're going to obviously be a key partner into your club returning. And we are finding at Goalball UK, when we are initially starting to talk to venues about re-engagement of events and competitions, venues are going through a pretty sticky patch themselves in terms of the leisure sector. There are a number of venues that are not open yet. There are some venues in different parts of the country where some leisure centres of part of a brand are open, some aren't. We've heard of leisure centre halls being turned into socially distanced gyms. So first thing to do after you've kind of got your working group together, approach your venue and find out the state of play in the venue. Venues will expect you to be following NGB guidance. So that's us as Goalball UK as a national governing body. And they will again expect you to have a COVID-19 risk assessment. This is pretty much industry standard now across the leisure sector. Step 3, talk to your members and your workforce. Gauge the feeling of your people returning. Everyone will have a slightly different outlook, probably based on their lived experience of COVID-19. So don't be surprised if there is a varying level of, let's say, keenness to return. And again, this goes back to the information you provide about giving people as much information to enable them to make a choice so that they're going to feel safe and comfortable when they come to your club session. Leads on to opting in again. When the time is right, do send that email or that communication requesting people to opt in. Some people may not be ready to return, and as clubs and teammates and coaches, you need to respect that. As I said, everyone's circumstances will be different. Workforce training. So an organisation called SIMSA and Sport England have provided some training online called Reactivate. It's free. We are requesting that volunteers do this training so everyone who is delivering within a session has some shared knowledge of good practice and guidance regarding COVID-19. The training itself takes approximately an hour to an hour and 15 minutes, but I will confess the usability is not the best. We have fed that back, but at the moment that is the training we're recommending for coaches and volunteers. If you're having real issues, please get in touch. Final thing, once you've kind of appointed your officers and you've got to a point where you feel you can get a date in the diary of a training session, please provide Goalball UK your timeline, and we've set up a registration form for this. This will enable us to build a timeline for us to offer support to clubs, and when we think our clubs will be back training. And this will also provide us data to feed back to Sport England and other partners about how our return to play is going. By doing that, this will also then give you access to £100 of support to pay for PPE and cleaning. I will confess it's not going to pay for all of it. It is a contribution, but we've tried to make it as simple as possible in that we're not going to be asking for receipts. It's a simple case of giving us your bank account details, and we will transfer the money on the basis that you've got a date in the diary, or at least a timeline in mind, for getting back in the sports hall. As you've probably noticed from the emails that have been going out, we've set up a dedicated email to answer your questions. We've done this to help us provide a consistent response internally to your questions and the support. It will also allow us to develop a frequently asked questions page on the website. And so rather than potentially approaching the person you normally talk to Goalball about in Goalball UK, if it's to do with COVID, please send it to this email address, because all the member of staff will do is reply to you and say, please, I'll forward it onto COVID address. So please use that email address when you have questions and things come up. The web page, we see this as being a kind of evolving piece of work. At the moment, there are resources and templates on there, and we will, as things come up, we will host more information on that web page, including the frequently asked questions. The PPE grant, again, previously mentioned that, but yeah, we're trying to make that as simple as possible for clubs to access, and we'll hope it at least provides the opportunity for clubs to get back immediately without too much financial pressure from the PPE. We will review later down the line whether we need to run another round of the grant. All I would say is, when you're now applying for funding bids and there's equipment and you're applying for equipment, put PPE in that funding bid, because you can't. That will help you spread out the cost coming from your core funds that you have at the moment. Webinars, so obviously the one we're running tonight, but we also intend, as guidance changes and we introduce new protocols, particularly around what competitions will look like in terms of the rules, and various other procedures, we will run additional webinars. So I'm now going to hand you over to Nigel Hayden from Sports Insure, who I hope is on the call. Steve or Tom, could you unmute Nigel if he's on?
I think I've just done it.
Oh, hiya. Hi, Nigel.
Hello. Yeah, thank you very much. I think it's very important that we join webinars such as this to try and help people understand the insurance position. I'd like to just reiterate something that Alex said at the beginning, that at the end of the day, safety is the most important part for everybody involved in the sport. So that's what we need to be concentrating on. It's also very important that you complete the Goalball guidance on risk assessments, particularly the COVID-19 risk assessment. In the event of a claim of some sort, insurers will always ask to see that sort of documentation. I don't know if any of you have been involved in a liability claim before, but the more information that could be provided in a recognisable format, particularly Goalball here have done a lot of work on getting this documentation right, and it's very important to use that from an insurance point of view, because that'll help successfully defend a claim. You know, we do lots of sports, and there's lots of varying qualities of risk assessments out there. But I think the ones that Goalball have produced are very good. You need to still do the regular risk assessments in the way you always have. It's also, and a lot of sports don't seem to have understood it, it is also important to appoint a COVID-19 officer, as Alex said earlier. I think it's in the government regulations, actually. But we know there are some sports that haven't done it. or some have done it just for the sport as a whole. But my understanding of it is that you need somebody on the ground at the event who is a nominated COVID-19 officer for that event. So I think that's very important as well. We'll keep our insurance portal up to date with information. I mean, it's changing so quickly in the insurance market. So we'll keep that information up to date as much as we can, as regular as we can. And we're always happy to answer questions. I mean, they're better if they come through Goalball, because then everybody gets the response. But I'm happy to answer questions tonight if I can, and after this event, if there are things that people want to ask us.
Okay, great. Thanks for that, Nigel. Really good to hear from you on the insurance front. We've just got a couple more slides, and then we're going to crack into the questions. So one of the key things we are excited about, and there was definitely a couple of questions that came in this, is regarding competition, and when is Goalball UK going to have competitions back up and running again after they were cancelled and curtailed the season. There's kind of two phases to this. One is around kind of re-engagement, and also looking to run friendly competition opportunities that are regional and probably more regionalised than the 3 regions that we had last year. And they are going to be open to team and individuals, but there will be number restrictions in place based on the venues that we're able to source and the size of the sports halls. And to maximise playing time, but also staff availability, we're probably going to have to try and condense what would have been a full season of weekends into less weekends. And in terms of availability and calendar, we're looking to run some midweek events planned alongside weekends. So I appreciate that's not going to work for people at school or college, and also people at work. But for those that aren't in those 3 environments, and if people want to take annual leave days, there will be some midweek Goalball available. So that's kind of where our thinking is at the moment. In terms of structure competitions, we definitely will have some this kind of season. What we're looking to do is potentially have regional qualification events that then go into a national event to provide context for competition. Unless something drastically changes, it's very unlikely we're going to have an intermediate trophy style event where we have close to 100 people at an event in a small space or even a big sports hall. In terms of the risk, right now that's just not on our radar, but we do want to provide national context to competition. So we're looking at a qualification element to regions, and then qualifying to some kind of national event, and that will be across all 3 levels, so novice, intermediate and elite. Just to give people an idea, some of the challenges to planning so far is places where we were potentially looking to go live with events have been in local lockdown, and that is an ever-changing thing. I mentioned it earlier, but finding suitable venues that are taking sports hall and event bookings is quite hard at the moment. As I mentioned about the leisure sector in terms of their situation with the gyms, a number of school and college sites are saying we don't need external visitors at the moment. We've got enough going on with dealing with our own pupils and staff in the school. And we've heard of some schools previously, before the summer break, they were using their sports halls as overspill classrooms. So there is a challenge across the sector for all sports around sports hall use. Workforce and volunteers. We've got a number of our traditional workforce that play an active role are kind of in the high risk and vulnerable category. So we're doing things to consider that. Traditionally as well, our volunteers come from the student sector. And again, that's a mixed picture across the country around people going back to uni, or people getting their lectures online. But again, we're working through our current partners to understand the picture better there. And again, like, there's no shying away from the work clubs have got to do. It's the same for us at Goalball UK. To put on the same level of tournaments and the same amount, it's going to take more time and more resource, and that ultimately has direct impact on finance and staffing. But what I will say is that we are here to provide that, so we're not shying away from that. We want to provide the best we can, a good competition and event offer for people to play our sport, and it's our role to deliver that the best we can. But I wanted to just let you know some of the initial challenges that we're facing when we're planning. Time frame, which a number of people have asked in the questions and the registration form. The planning is ongoing right now, and I'm hopeful we will have some events in the diary released in October, and then it may be that we have dates that are TBC based on finding a suitable venue, but the date is in the diary, and then we look for the venue. Sorry, it's a bit wishy-washy, but that's where we are at the moment. I don't want to tell you that everything is fine and we've got a lovely calendar, we're just putting the final touches to it and we're going to release it next week. That's not where we're at. So hopefully that helps you, I guess, manage expectations, but also understand where we are. Questions. So question came in: how is the game moving forwards and when can we start training? The guidance outlines how you can return. As soon as your club implements the guidance, you can return. And if your club is not back training, but there's Goalball UK events available, you're more than welcome to enter those events. Your club doesn't need to be back training before you enter potential Goalball UK events. When it comes to the venue checklist, what happens if you're not happy with the responses? What is the next step? Discuss with the venue to see if they can make adaptations. So basically highlighting your concerns. Consider further adaptations you could take within the sessions or at the venue to reduce the risk. Ultimately though, if you're not satisfied, you shouldn't use the venue, but please seek Goalball UK support and advice if this situation arises or you think it's going to happen. We may be able to influence through other partners, depending on the issue. Where halls do not have sufficient ventilation, who is responsible? It's the venue alongside the organisation delivering the session, so the club or Goalball UK. Part of assessing the suitability of the venue is to discuss the ventilation. And this was quite a hot topic when gyms weren't allowed to open back in the beginning of July. But yeah, speak to your venue and understand what they have in place. Are guide dogs allowed in the hall? Yes, they are, but we recommend only the owner and their support personnel, if they're there, interact with the dog. Do you expect all players to read the guidance before they turn up and play? I appreciate it's a large document, so not easy to digest for everyone. But what I would say is it must be available for people to read before opting in. It is then up to them if they read it. We also recommend clubs creating a pre-session email or document with the key actions that are going to be expected of people when they return to training, to almost try and simplify it a little bit. So what actually is going to have a direct impact on the players. They don't necessarily need to know too much about the working group and various other things that are happening behind the scenes. They just need to know what's going to happen when they arrive and what they need to do. Some players enjoy having friends at training sessions. How can we ask them to discourage this without upsetting both player and spectator? Be clear and polite, I'd say, in the tone of the communication. Currently, each person or participant is allowed one support personnel. But as I mentioned earlier, if as a participant you don't require support, please don't just bring your friend or friends to watch. And this sounds a bit harsh, but personal feelings at this stage are unfortunately secondary to safety. Safety is the priority. So unfortunately, if we have to upset someone because they can't come and watch you train, that is the position. How can players rehydrate during games? In training, there are a couple of options. Players can leave drinks in their personal areas, and then there are planned hydration breaks within the session. Or players can take water bottles onto the court and place the water bottles behind the post for the wingers and the back of the goal for the centre. All I'd say for that is make sure you've got your lids screwed on properly, as you're going to be cleaning up water if the ball hits it. In competition, Goalball UK, we're working through solutions at the moment to protect players and coaches, and we'll keep people posted on that. Water refill. Can clubs claim for bottled water from Goalball UK? The answer is no. Encourage players to bring pre-filled water bottles or own bottled water adequate for the session. If as a club you choose to provide bottled water for the participants and workforce, it will be at your own cost. So I recommend, as I said, get people to bring their own tap water or bottled water. The court string is normally retained. Is this still the case? Yes. People setting up should sanitize or wash hands before and after taking up the court. And disposing of the string, I don't think is practical or cost effective. We recommend only laying the lines required for training, so not full court. If you need some advice on laying the lines that aren't a full court, then please do email in and we can give some advice there. Last slide for questions from the forums, and then we'll go to the chat. If a coach attended more than one session, do they need to wear a mask? Not specifically. However, the advice stands if coaches come within, or they think they're going to come within 2 meters of players or other people in the session, they should wear a face covering. Some people may wish to wear one all the time, and this is also fine. But consider how long you're wearing the same face mask for. You may need 3 or 4 for a session if you're there for a longer period of time. Pre-screening, so this is for the players before they attend. Why do we need to keep the results 21 days? Who and how should they be kept? This is a recommendation. It's really to try and encourage people to take personal responsibility to make sure that they actually do the pre-screening. And if required, that you can show evidence that people didn't arrive to your session with symptoms of coronavirus. So it's really, if people don't do it and they don't keep a record, as a club, you can't necessarily control that, but they are then kind of blatantly not taking responsibility for what they're doing. Should we be taking the temperature of players before allowing them to join the sessions? This was considered in the guidance, but currently is not a requirement for government or Goalball UK. If your club wish to add this measure, you can do, but consider the logistics of undertaking the check face-to-face and potentially less than 2 meters away from someone. There's a link that we will share in the FAQs, but basically it's advice from the government explaining that the temperature check is not shouldn't be used to solely rely on in terms of detecting coronavirus. So at the moment, the guidance isn't a requirement to undertake the temperature check. Is it correct that referees should both be tableside? This is something we are, at the moment, is in the guidance, and it's something that we're going to be trialling. The thinking behind it is to basically the referee that's on the table side, they normally spend quite a lot of time in front of the bench area. So we're considering moving them. And again, one of the reasons for the re-engagement events is to see if this works. In training, to reduce this further, you may even just want to have one referee whistling on the halfway line. And that could be an option for your sessions. I know some clubs with limited workforce, you may only have the luxury of one referee anyway, so you won't have the problem of deciding where your 2 referees will be going. But at the moment, if they're on the same side, away from where people are positioned, then that is the advice. You'll be pleased to know that is the end of that section. So we've got at least 20 minutes to take questions. So Tom and Steve, if you want to fire away from what's coming in at the chat, and if anyone's got questions from the audience.
Yeah, there's only one. It's from Warren. He's just asked, the Cambridge Club attracts people from far and wide. A lot of people travel from between an hour to 2 hours each way to get into training. Would it be allowed within this guidance for some of those people to meet up locally and do some kind of training local to them? Could this be official club training? Would it be covered under Goalball UK liability insurance?
So I think that is a good, sensible option, Warren. All I would say is that each time you go to a new venue or there is new activity, that the people undertaking that activity, there needs to be the risk assessment in place. There needs to be the communication with the venue. There needs to be the person responsible within that session for the activity. So it's still applying the guidance, but just in a different location. But appreciate, clubs where you've got people travelling from far and wide, then that is an option. Just consider who is going to be in charge at the session, and can people safely follow the guidance? And you've got a risk assessment in place with the venue. Then that's absolutely fine within the guidance.
Excellent. Just another quick one that's just come in now from O is, can anyone complete the reactivate training, including players? Do you recommend this? Recommend this in order to better inform the players?
Yes, if you would like your players to undertake the training, then it is free to as many people as you want. All I would say is it's an external website, and if you bump into accessibility issues, please contact us, and we will fight the case for things being changed. The way the training is mapped out is it's a number of modules where you basically digest some information, and then you do a short kind of Q&A kind of test based on what you've understood in that information. The usability, as I said, we're not convinced it's the most user-friendly, but as much kind of knowledge sharing and informing your participants and workforce about returning to play and about coronavirus and how that impacts on sport, then go for it.
Excellent. Just another one that's put on, and Sam, Goff, Louise, I'm imagining it's both of you, but just probably to paraphrase it, they've just asked around, what about travelling from Scotland? So I don't know, is it worth mentioning something around the home nations as well, Alex? Just is there anything else that's perhaps come out from there?
Yeah, so we've tried to design the guidance that it can be used across all of the home nations. Where there are clashes, the home nation advice almost trumps our guidance, and where if people point out specifics where our guidance is clashing with advice in any of the home nations, then please do let us know, and we can make changes to the guidance and issue updated versions. We've tried our best to stay across all of the 4 governments' ever-evolving advice, but I'm not going to lie, there will probably be things that have slipped through. So if you read something and it doesn't make sense linked to our guidance, we won't take offence for you to kind of point that out. and we're trying our best to stay across it all. But as I said, things will naturally are naturally going to slip through. But I hope it's not anything major that is going to put people's safety at risk. And if it is, we need to make immediate changes to our guidance.
Yeah, excellent. Obviously, there's two questions just come from Paul Miller. So I think the first one, which might be good just to clarify, is around guidance regarding. Sorry, questions are coming in now. Kind of guidance around sighted guides in and around the venue. That might just be one that we can quickly have a chat around.
Yeah, guiding is a massive part of our sport in terms of the way our people interact with getting to and from our sessions, and obviously around the venue. The advice from guide dogs is that if you are doing guiding, you need to be wearing a face covering, and the same for the person being guided. They also recommend hand sanitizer or washing hands immediately before and immediately after guiding. And thirdly, they recommend using a disposable or a washable touch surface for the person touching the arm of, assuming we're using the arm of the guide. Obviously, that's the advice. How that works out practically between players, coaches, and volunteers really is to be seen. But that is the advice. If I know from my, I guess, personal circumstances with guiding people around venues, if you can use your voice and the players use their canes, then that is also probably a better option, but may not always be possible. So yeah, voice and mobility aids, and then if you do need to guide, then face coverings, hand washing, and a disposable surface for the guide to grab onto. The person being guided to grab onto. When we talk about practical things, I know clubs do kind of station meet and greets where you might have 5 or 6 people turn up at once. That is really logistics that you need to make arrangements locally to see how that works out. And again, can you put things in place if it's multiple people doing the station meets, or there's a bit of a relay system, or again, people use their aids and there's someone at the back and someone at the front using voice, and you kind of make a vocal chain. Get creative, but try to stick within the guidance. I hope that helps. It's a real challenge, not only for us at Goalball, but for partially sighted and blind people in society in general.
Yeah, excellent. I'm just thinking of time, that's all. We've got a few more. So another question that's just come in is where clubs only have one coach, and they are the only fully sighted person who is usually there to set up and do the coaching, would it make sense to link up areas / other clubs to ensure there is enough people to help set up and clean, etc. during the session?
Yes, if you want, agree. If you can reach out to other clubs, and if you need our contact detail, us to share contact details with permission, we can do that. Please also get in touch if you see that as a really as kind of like a deal breaker, because we may be able to offer support in terms of personnel depending on the date, time, and length of session. And I feel it may be potentially easier to put on a day's worth of Goalball and potentially attract additional volunteers to that whole day, rather than requesting support kind of every other Tuesday for 2 hours or every week on a Monday. But yeah, if your club is really struggling, speak to other clubs in the local area. Can you meet up and share workforce? And then also speak to us, and we will do our best to help you at least get a session on, so people have got something in the diary to look forward to, because it's been a long time since we've all been back on court.
Yeah, excellent. Another question, just before I go through this next question, if people can't access the chat function, just give us a wave, and then we will get to you. But for people that are watching it pre-recorded, please do not vote, as obviously all that ITV rigmarole. So the next question is around with a big club looking at local venues. Will the £100 grant be given per faction, or will it be only per payment per club, no matter the size?
Initially, it's per club. If you feel that's restrictive and you don't have any club funds within reason, then approach us and we can have a conversation. I'm mindful every club has different funding situations, but we feel the £100 is at the moment appropriate. The majority of the PPE is for workforce and for the cleaning elements. I personally don't think it's unreasonable to ask players to buy their own personal hand sanitizers. People should be using them in everyday life at the moment. So that's one cost that can potentially be on the players. But yeah, if there's genuine concern or you feel you've got a genuine case for additional funds, then get in touch. But the chances are at the moment it will be a no. We've got potentially 35 different organisations or clubs that the grant is open to. So if we start doubling it up for everyone, we're going to be there won't be much budget left for competitions. So yeah.
Excellent. Question from Yusuf around volunteering. So what is the guidance regarding table officials such as himself at tournaments, and obviously how are we now going to implement this?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Yusuf. All I can say is at the moment is volunteers, when they come to Goalball tournaments, is that we will be providing a safe environment, and table officials will be socially distanced. There will potentially, with their own individual table and individual chairs, their own stopwatches, pens, etc. We will also have wipes at the table. Again, hand sanitizer available. For a scoring role, for the timer role, which Yusuf, I know you do, we intend to, after every game, that will be wiped and disinfected. So whoever's next on cleans their hands. There's then a clean timer there, and then they clean their hands once they've finished the timer, and then the timer is cleaned again for the next person coming on. We do plan to issue specific volunteer and team guidance when we get to the point of the re-engagement events and competitions.
Yeah, hopefully that answers your question, Yusuf. Got a few more minutes. We've just got another question coming from Steve around joint club training sessions would still be restricted to 12 player participants. Is that correct? Obviously, is there any restrictions around if you're combining a club session?
Yeah, so it's 12. Yeah, it's 12 participants per session. So if you're joining two clubs and you've got 12 each, then you need to leave 6 people each and have one session. There's potential that if you run one session, so for 12 participants, say 12 novice participants, they could then depart. You do a cleaning round, and then 12 new participants arrive for the afternoon session, which is intermediate. But during each session, it is maximum 12 participants for now. We will keep assessing those numbers, but we believe 12 is a practical number to run a session and maintain the social distance off court.
Excellent. Yeah, just another one that we've from Steve. Well, Steve Cox. Do we have anyone got any questions around the insurance? For Nigel, I don't know if there's any questions around kind of like insurance now that obviously you've listened to the document and listened to Alex obviously speaking about it. No? Good. No? Have we got any more questions? I'm just mindful of time. Nigel, have you got anything that you'd like to add?
No, I don't think so. Just, reiterate all the points that Alex has made, really. It is all about keeping safe and writing risk assessments, and then everybody will get back to the sport, and hopefully there won't be a second lockdown, and we can all move forward from there. So I think you've done an excellent job. I think it's very thorough. It's very detailed, but it also maintains the practicality to allow people to continue the sport, which is all you can do at the moment. So I think you should be very pleased with what you've produced.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, Paul, have you got your hand up? Is that you'd like to ask a question? Where are we? I think you should be off of mute.
With regards to insurance, here at Birmingham, we're going to be in a situation where we're not likely to have a venue for some time. Where do we stand on insurance to an alternative venue?
As long as if the risk assessment, if you do the risk assessment for that venue where the activity is going to be held, and Goalball UK know the venue, then you're within insurance, you're within the cover. So you're not restricted to this is my venue. If you need to change venue, we just need to be notified and then follow the guidance as per previously discussed, really. So we don't want to restrict people because we know the venue landscape is pretty shaky. We're not saying you need to go back to your venue where pre-lockdown. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
The insurance isn't written around venue-specific places. The insurance is written around the rules and regulations written by Goalball UK. So as long as you're operating within those, then the insurance will apply.
Thanks, Nigel.
Excellent. I'm just mindful that it's 7 o'clock. Bang on. We've not overrun, which is really good. I'd just like to obviously thank you all for coming. Virtually, it's been great to have so many people on. We've been at over 30 people, which is really good, and obviously passes on some great insights. I'd like to pass on our thanks from Goalball UK to Nigel for obviously taking his time and obviously being here on this evening. And I think, just probably pass it over to Alex just to, have you got anything that you'd like to kind of add before we wrap it up, really?
Yeah, just finally to say, we want to support you guys get your clubs back, and you are the sport, and we're going to try and do as much as we can within what we've got to help you get back. Please use the COVID email address, and no question is a silly question. We'll try and get back to you as soon as possible. And it may be that we pick up the phone and have a chat. And we're here to, if you are having club meetings and you would like our support within the meeting, again, please just let us know when it is and we'll do our best to get there. But yeah, great to see everyone on the call, and thank you for listening. It will be sent out as an audio file, so you can then share it with the rest of your club, and it will be hosted on the website. But yeah, thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your evenings.